Great. Thank you, Sam. I
And
think
we are
we're live
live.
now.
Yep. And I'm going to let in the press.
Perfect. Thanks. Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Glad you could join us. Really excited to have so many members of the press on the call today. I'm Alicia Porter.
We don't need to adjust that because you'll just put it in later, right?
Deputy, we'll get to our first thing. To mitigate echoes or anything, could you please mute your computers, or phones, whatever device you're on? Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get into it quickly, but you feel free to type your questions in the chat or raise hand function. And if you have any technical difficulties, you can email me too. But please do remember to keep your phones or computers muted until it's ready for questions. With that, Commissioner Grove, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Alicia. Good to see you all. Steve Grove here, Commissioner of Deed, joined by our Research Director, Angeline and Nguyen. We're happy to be here with you this morning. Thanks for taking some time out of your schedules to connect with Deed. We are here today to talk about the state of Minnesota's economy and some new efforts Deed is engaging in to help employers and job seekers connect. You know, it's sort of stunning when you look at the last 3 years about the number of sort of records that we have set in Minnesota's economy, whether it's been the number of unemployment insurance dollars we've gotten out to people, whether it's the trust fund relief bill we've recently passed, whether it's the lowest ever unemployment rate we've had in our state's history, or the record job growth we've had in the wake of the pandemic. We've been setting a lot of records lately, and today we're coming together to share another record in our state, which is that we now are logging the highest number of job vacancies in Minnesota ever, over 214,000 vacancies as of Q4 of last year. And Angeline and I will get into the details of that vacancy report in just a moment, because I think the details do matter. We want to give you a sense for where those vacancies are greatest. But I also wanted to take a moment at the top just to mention that while we're looking at these vacancies as a big challenge for our economy, they are also a sign of an economy that is coming back and where growth is happening, right? You don't have job vacancies unless people are hiring. So we know in some ways it's a sign of an economy that is roaring back. And these workforce challenges that we're facing now, and they're greater than ever before, but they have been with us really for the better part of the last decade. And they've been really one of the defining challenges that Minnesota's economy has faced in the last several years, even before the COVID-19 pandemic. And here at Deed, we've been really trying to reimagine almost every aspect of how our operations work to help employers and job seekers connect. Many of you who follow our work will recall our Good Jobs Now campaign that we started about 1.5 years ago. This is a campaign in which we shifted our call center model at Deed to have our job service specialists, who usually would sit in a brick and mortar building, actually proactively call unemployment insurance users on the phone and help them find new jobs across our state. We've completely reimagined our physical footprint across Minnesota. We've gotten into more community venues across the state. We've launched Career Force Corners, which has put us in over 30 libraries across Minnesota to make sure we're getting out into community where community is and not just waiting for job seekers to come to us. And we've pushed for a lot of reforms at our department, whether it's to the Workforce Development Fund and how that gets those payroll tax dollars into the streams of workforce development and skill growth, or whether it's ensuring that we've had over 130 million additional workforce dollars land in our department over the last few years from both the state legislature, but also federal grants that we've been aggressively applying for. We have seen this as a moment of surging in workforce. And today is no different. We are on the wake of this record-setting job vacancies report, announcing a new campaign for this summer, a sprint, if you will, that we're calling the Summer of Jobs. And the Summer of Jobs is a pretty basic idea, but it's really to galvanize and highlight these changes we've made in an all-out sprint to help job seekers and employers connect. There's really two basic aspects to the program. The first is we're going to shadow some of the highest demand jobs across Minnesota and lift them up as opportunities that people might not be paying attention to. Think about, a CNC operator on a manufacturing floor doing an automation central job in the manufacturing sector, or a turbine technician or a solar installer doing a green job in our state. Those jobs are growing really, really fast in Minnesota. Light truck drivers, huge growth there as CDL providers grow in our state. Full stack software engineers as tech jobs are growing through the roof. Or CNAs, nurses who are graduating through some short-term programs to get into the healthcare field. The job vacancies are persistent across our economy, and we're going to spend some time in the Summer of Jobs campaign highlighting some of those in-demand jobs for workers to be aware of, and then demonstrating the resources we have to help people find roles in those positions. The second component of this is to highlight pools of labor that might be overlooked often in our economy, and that many businesses don't have ties into, right? And this is where state government is designed to help. So many employers might hire in sectors of our labor economy that they aren't aware of if they just had a way in. And so we're going to be lifting up people with disabilities, people of color, immigrant communities, youth, recent retirees, those who have recently been released from correctional facilities. If you want to do something about having 214,000 job vacancies in our state, you need to look in every possible labor pool in our community. And the reality is that even though there's about one person searching for over 2 open jobs in the state, there's a lot of labor hiding in plain sight. So we know there's a lot of people in our state that are looking for jobs that are available if those connections aren't being made. And that, we believe, is our job, to be that bridge between businesses and job seekers. So we are excited about this work. The Summer of Jobs campaign kicks off today. We'll have announcements on jobs we'll be shadowing and highlighting, and pools of labor we'll be lifting up in the coming days and weeks. But this really is a moment for us as a state to galvanize our attention on these vacancies and help Minnesota's economy continue to come back even faster. So let's get to some of the details of the Job Vacancy Report that I think kind of provides the context for the launch of the Summer of Jobs campaign. I'll give a couple of the high notes and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Angelina, to give some of the details. At a basic level, as I said before, 214,000 job vacancies as of Q4 of last year. That's up 68% from the fourth quarter of 2020. So a huge jump in that 1 year gap between 2020 and 2021. This is the highest we've ever had in the state. It beats all records. And we see that while those vacancies increase, the number of unemployed workers continues to decline. We are seeing workers fall off the unemployment insurance rolls every week. In fact, we're down to basically a kind of standard level of usage of our unemployment insurance system at this point. It's business as usual there as we really focus on getting folks into jobs across the state. Just to give some perspective on the ratios here, with less than 93,000 unemployed workers statewide in the fourth quarter of last year, there's now just 0.4 unemployed people for every vacancy. So there's twice as many positions open as unemployed individuals in our state, well down from a year before that survey was taken when we were at 1.1 worker for every vacancy. So it's really been a massive shift. And the job vacancy rate, which is kind of the standard percentage you use to describe this field, is 8.2%. So that means that there are 8.2 job openings for every 100 filled jobs in the state. That's up from 4.5% a year ago. So almost doubling in that year-long period as it relates to job vacancies. Breaking it down regionally, the 7-county Twin Cities metro area had about 127,000 job vacancies. Greater Minnesota had just over 87,000 job vacancies. So the vacancies have grown slightly faster in Greater Minnesota at a rate of 69% compared to the Twin Cities at a rate of 67%, but relatively on parity there. And then meanwhile, I think just the broader context of this economic moment we're in, our labor force participation rate remains below its pre-pandemic level at 68.3% in April compared to 70% before the pandemic hit. But it is still much higher than the national average. And we've had 3 straight months of that number going up significantly. So people are getting back into the market. But some of those long-term projections on people leaving the labor force have continued throughout the pandemic, and in fact, in some ways, accelerated. Those record low unemployment rates, steady trend line we're seeing in our state's economy. So with that, I'll turn it over to Angelina for more of the data on the survey, and then happy to answer any questions on our Summer of Jobs campaign or our Job Vacancy Survey. Angelina, over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Hi, everyone. My name is Angeline Nguyen, Research Director with DEED at the Labor Market Information Office. And my colleague Alicia will share a few slides here to show you the detailed data. Okay, thank you. So as the Commissioner had talked about, during the fourth quarter of 2021, we saw more than 214,000 vacancies, which is the highest we have on record. And this shows continued strong demand for workers across the state. Next slide, please. And with less than 93,000 unemployed workers statewide, the ratio, there are now 0.4 unemployed persons for each vacancy in the state, which is the lowest ratio we have on record. Next slide, please. So I want to dive into occupational groups. So the five highest groups are bolded on the right side of this pie chart. So by occupational group, when we see food preparation and serving had the most job vacancies with about 33,000 postings and a vacancy rate of 16.7%. And the second highest is the sales and related occupational group with 26,800 vacancies and a vacancy rate of almost 11%. And then healthcare practitioners and technical are next with almost 20,000 openings and a vacancy rate of 10.5%. Healthcare support staff has 18,200 openings and a vacancy rate of 11%. And transportation and material moving has the fifth highest vacancies with more than almost 17,000 openings and a vacancy rate of 8%. So the top 5 detailed occupations with the most job vacancies were, the first one is retail salesperson. Second is fast food and counter workers. Third is personal care aides. Fourth is first line supervisors of food service workers. And fifth is cashiers. Next slide, please. And then the great thing about this job vacancy survey is it allows us to dig into wage details and education and experience requirements of each vacancy. So the median, which is the middle 50th percentile wage offer for all job vacancies in Q4 was $18.09 per hour. And this is the highest median wage offer in the history of this survey. We see the highest wage offer increases in some of the highest paying occupations, including management, architecture and engineering, business and financial operations, computer and mathematical occupations, which all increased more than 20% from fourth quarter of 2020 to fourth quarter of 2021. But we also saw lower paying occupations like food prep and serving related occupations, production, building and grounds cleaning and maintenance, and transportation and material moving occupations also increased between 15% to 20% over the year in terms of average wage offers. And then for work experience requirements for these vacancies, 50% require 1 or more years of work experience, which means that the other 50% require less than 1 year of work experience. So we can see that employers are relaxing the requirements of what they're looking for to attract more talent. Okay, back to you, Commissioner.
Great, thanks, Angelina. So again, record-setting day here again in Minnesota with a record number of job vacancies. Our department is moving quickly to expand upon our existing efforts to really reimagine how we help connect job seekers and employers through the Summer of Jobs campaign. We're excited to share more about that in the coming weeks, and eager here today to answer any questions that you might have about either of those announcements. So Lisa, I'll turn it back over to you to moderate any questions we might have from our friends in the media.
Wonderful, thanks, Commissioner. Feel free to type your questions in the chat over there. You can certainly use the raise hand function as well. We're happy to take your questions now. We've got one from JD. I know it's part of your job to be optimistic looking ahead, but is this concerning? There aren't enough workers to fill the amount of jobs that are open. Beyond that, how are employers responding?
Yeah, that's a fair question, JD. I mean, I'm optimistic about Minnesota's economy because of the recovery we've had over the last 3 years. And again, job vacancies mean there's demand for growth. But is it concerning? Yes, it is concerning. We need more workers in our state, and we need to think about this really holistically. I think at one level, we need to make sure that we're leveraging and elevating every available worker we have in Minnesota into a well-paying job that they're qualified for, right? And that's a central component of what our department does. And again, we believe there's some inefficiencies there in the market. There are a lot of people searching for jobs that aren't connecting to them effectively, and that's something we need to do more of. Even if you do that, though, there's not enough bodies in the state to cover the open jobs. The math doesn't work out. So there's 2 other elements I would highlight here. One is we do have to encourage more people to come and live in our state. and our net migration has not been high over the last 20 years, along with almost every other Midwestern state. We need to see our population continue to grow and make Minnesota a welcoming state that we want to bring people into. We have a campaign at joinusmn.com that is focused for the first time in our department's history on talent attraction. We have never made that a component of what DEED has done, but we don't feel we can ignore that at this moment in Minnesota's history. To do so would be at our own peril. We have to speak to those who are thinking about living and working in other places at a time of significant mobility in the labor market, where people have more choices of where they can live now than ever before, given work from home trends and even just the fact of everyone kind of stepping back during the pandemic and asking themselves, what's a good job? Where should I go? We have an opportunity here to really be aggressive and assertive on getting folks to come and live and work here. And Minnesota's too often, I think, rested on its laurels there. We've kind of just said, oh, if you want to come here, great. We're fine being kind of a secret gem in the Midwest here. We can't be complacent right now as it relates to promoting our state. It is just too competitive out there. So we feel very strong about being assertive. You can see more what we're doing there at joinusmn.com. Last thing I'd highlight is automation is something that every company and every business in our state has to embrace with open arms. We have to get the fastest trend in automation of any state in the country if we're going to be able to create the kind of jobs people want to do and cover the productivity losses you get when you don't have enough workers. So we have some grant programs at DEED that invest in automation for mid-sized manufacturers that find it a little bit harder to do so. We have more federal money coming on that front that we have aggressively applied for to increase automation in our state's economy. This idea that the robots are coming to take your jobs, which I think is always a concern in any moment in history when there's a lot of technology advancement, is something that we would say, I think every business wants robots to come take their jobs because there's not enough people to take them. So these advances in automation only up-level the jobs and the skills required to work in our economy. They make the jobs better, easier, safer. So I'd say, migration, taking advantage of existing workers in our state, and automation are three general areas that just from a macro perspective, we got to focus on as a state. So yeah, I am concerned. I don't mean to gloss over the fact that this is an issue. I mean, I hear it from employers every single day that this is a challenge that they face. And I think our department is trying to just be really aggressive in our posture there and help come alongside those businesses and those workers to make connections.
Thanks, Commissioner. We've got another one. This from Kara Levin. Do you have thoughts on how small businesses can compete with the wages and benefits that some larger employers are able to offer?
Well, this is a great question. I mean, inflation is a serious concern that I think every business, every consumer in the country is considering right now. And there are cases certainly where larger businesses can afford to raise wages better than smaller businesses. But I will say that we have seen rising wages across every sector of the economy. And certainly we've seen them more prevalent in the lowest wage professions and those professions that have the highest job vacancies. So you do see the economy responding in the market to where those vacancies are, where those lower wage jobs are, because those are the areas where finding workers is the hardest. I mean, any given employee, what we hear from our job seekers, has a lot of factors they put into taking a job. Wages are, of course, a big one. But there's other components like availability of childcare, availability of housing, obviously the kind of company that you get to work for, the kind of manager that you have. I think there's not a business in Minnesota today that isn't rethinking every element of what they offer an employee to make themselves an attractive place to work. And wages are part of it. But there's a much bigger story there that I think smart employers are catching on to about flexibility, autonomy. Workers are in the driver's seat. It's worth pointing out here that when you have 214,000 job vacancies, that is an unprecedented moment of worker power in your economy. So workers do in many ways call a lot of the shots here, and employers who find ways to listen to what they need, find ways to meet them where they're at, find ways to think flexibly about compensation and hours and benefits are those that are going to succeed. And I think we as the state are trying to find ways that we can differentiate Minnesota's economy in aggregate as a great place to work. That's why we fought so hard for paid family medical leave during the legislative session, or earned sick and sick time, things that kind of could set us apart from other states as benefits of working here in a tight market. So, I think size of the business, yes, is a factor, but there's a lot of other components here too.
Thanks, Commissioner. We're going to go over to Ethan Nelson with Minneapolis St. Paul Business Journal. Ethan, feel free to unmute. Thanks.
Hi, yeah, thanks. We're looking at data from in this conference from Q4 of 2021, but I know that the BLS has data out through, I think, March of this year. So I'm wondering, why are we looking at Q4 data from last year? Does that help kind of reduce noise, or?
Yeah, Angelina is probably the best to answer this question at a detailed level. It's a great question, Ethan. There are more monthly snapshots you can get of job vacancy rates. This particular survey is by far the most holistic and robust from a data collection perspective. And it's a kind of a standard quarterly measure that our state has used for, I think, almost over a decade. Angelina can correct me if I'm wrong there, but it's significant because of its robustness. But there are more real-time measurements that we can track. And Angelina, you maybe want to just speak to this briefly. And if there's specific data questions, we can maybe take those offline too. But I'll turn it to you.
That's a great question. So yes, the BLS surveys, there are several programs there that we do our monthly jobs reports based off of, and we track employed numbers, unemployment, wages for big super sectors. But this survey, the job vacancy survey, allows us to dive into details that we don't get from other data sets, such as occupations, firm size, what educational requirements or work experience requirements do we see in job postings. So it allows us some more nuanced details to help us understand like what employers are looking for, where the job seeking picture looks, how it looks for both employees and job seekers and for employers who are looking to hire. Those details we don't get from the other data sets. So we do this detailed survey twice a year in Q2 and Q4 every year to account for seasonal changes. And then we also keep a close eye on the monthly BLS surveys on employment and unemployment numbers.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Angelina. Thanks, Ethan. We've got another one. Thank you, Dee, from the Star Tribune. What is different about what the Summer of Jobs program is going to do from what has been done in the past?
Yeah, great question. So in many ways, this is a way to galvanize a lot of the pieces of what the agency has been doing to connect job seekers and businesses into one campaign that seeks to highlight for both businesses and job seekers what's available out there. We always want to have some component of a campaign in the market just to highlight and create awareness around availability. A lot of workers just aren't aware of what the highest paying, best jobs are out in our economy, or don't know how to get there. So there's an educational component to that. For employers, it's much more tactical. I mean, we are making direct connections between businesses and pools of labor through webinars, through job fairs, through specific meetings, through really in the trenches, one-on-one work by workforce strategy consultants across the state who find businesses who need workers and make those connections to different communities. I'll take our Office of New Americans as one example. Our Assistant Commissioner, Nisa Haji Mumin, who leads that office, holds regular sessions with businesses and immigrant communities to make some of those connections that are just harder for a business that doesn't have a multilingual HR department or a staff of many to find workers in those communities. So Summer of Jobs is an umbrella that we're using to describe all that work and to really accelerate it. We know that this is a moment that requires new action to get new results. So, I think giving it that sense of it being a summer, being a sprint, knowing that this is a unique window in our economy is going to help, we believe, galvanize our efforts and just, again, highlight and amplify the opportunity that does exist in our economy. It's a challenge, but it's a better challenge to have than the challenge of, say, there being no jobs open in our state and unemployment rates rising, right? So it's a good challenge, but one that requires a really focused effort.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. We have time for just a couple more questions. If anyone would like to put one in the chat, raise their hand. Well, you can certainly feel free to follow up with me by email after the presser if you'd like. And Commissioner, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody, today. And thanks, Angelina, for your leadership here as well. We're excited for this campaign. We're eager to share the message of opportunity in our economy. We've seen it continue to grow, and we're looking forward to the Summer of Jobs campaign. So thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.